The Pacers are up 1-0 against the Bucks. How do they hope they can be better in game 2? What did the players say? What do I think? How does Damian Lillard shift any of this? We'll talk about it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Monday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers, as always. My name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, flying solo, not bothering anybody on Easter if you celebrate. Hope you had a lovely holiday, spent some time with family. Let's look ahead towards game 2 in this series. The Pacers won game 1. They should feel great about it. They led by double digits from the middle of the second quarter onward. However, they were dodging some bullets in the fourth quarter. The Bucks shot terribly. They could have a star player returning soon. It looks like rotational shifts could be coming for Milwaukee, given how the game started and ended on Saturday. The Pacers have to be proactive, make their own changes, and try to be better, which is why after game 1, some of you probably saw the media sessions, the Pacers post. If you didn't, or the ones you didn't see that were in the locker room, I asked a lot of people, hey, look, you won, but where do you think you guys can be better in game 2? Because yes, the Pacers won. They deserve to win. They played better than the Bucks, but there's always room for improvement in a game like that. So we're going to talk about what they said, what I think the Pacers could do better or could shift from that performance, and then talk about the Damian Lillard of it all, if that even is a factor. I'm not going to spend too much time on him. You guys have heard me talk a lot about why I'm not going to spend a ton of time on Dame. I've been talking too much in this intro. Let's go. I asked Rick Carlisle, my last question to him. Rick, what do you guys think you can do better in game 2? He said first, he thinks Giannis got to the basket too much. And that was a themed answer, I thought, kind of from everybody who I asked this question to. Wasn't the only thing they gave. Everybody gave more than just one thing, but they were not thrilled with their Giannis defense, which was really interesting to me. I didn't think that it was spectacular or anything. They've had better performances against him on the defensive end, particularly last year in the regular season when the wall was at its absolute best. But, Giannis goes 14 for 23. He's probably going to do that whenever he wants. He's a beast. He missed both his twos. He missed 7 free throws. That really hurt his performance. But I thought they did well to recover when they made him give up the ball. I thought they mixed up coverages enough that the Bucks had to think just enough. That was something Giannis said a lot in his own post-game press conference when he was talking about where he wanted the Bucks to be better and where he thought his teammates could improve, including him, was being more decisive. He kept saying decisive. And I got that. What he meant by that. Regardless, I thought the Pacers defended him okay. And yet, what do I know? Who cares what I think? What the players think and what Rick Carlisle thinks is they thought Giannis got to the basket too much. Pascal Siakam said they need to make it look more crowded out there when it comes to him, right? Thomas Bryant said they've got to mix it up. They got to keep him guessing, keep his mind moving. I talked about that a lot before the series. I think they did that in the game, right? There was 4-5 switching. There was sending 2 to him if the side was empty, 3 to him if he was coming straight at him in transition. The wall was there sometimes. It wasn't other times. Mixing up the coverages is how you defend Giannis. And I think they'll continue to evolve how and who and what they do on him as the series progresses. But generally, I thought they did okay, and they were not happy, and Rick led off with this, how much they let him get to the rim. So on one hand, I'll be curious what kind of adjustments they can even make to do that, right? If you find out how to permanently keep Giannis away from getting to the basket for 48 minutes of basketball, you will be the first team to do it, right, in a decade of the NBA. But making it harder is certainly possible. And I wonder what that would take for the Pacers to do it. Do they try to send more help than they did at the expense of him maybe upping his assist number from 1? And I think some of that was their recovery to shooters. Some of that was a little luck. Some of that was strategic. But are they willing to make that trade, right? Giannis made over 60% of his shots. Can they say, yep, you know what? We're willing to live with other guys shooting. Is that a different approach when it comes to switching? Is that a different approach when it comes to who specifically is the guy on him? Even though, again, like I said before the series, I don't really think the specifics of that matter. I'll be fascinated to see how the Pacers do this because there's a lot of other adjustments the Pacers talked about that I can at least explain how they could try to do it or what that could look like. What do you do? What is the keep Giannis away from the rim plan? Is it sending him 4 guys? Is it sending him 3 on the block? Are you not switching 4-5 and instead just scramming in another guy who's not even involved in the pick and roll? It's it's a tough thing to do. So I don't know what that's going to look like for the Pacers, but I do think if they think it's a problem, because every single player I asked the question to mentioned it, they will change something, right? They will change the way they cover him in some way or another. And like Carlisle continued to say, like, they wanted to build the walls, and yet he still got there, right? That was the specific one he mentioned. So if you made me like boil down to what I think how it would look different is, they'll either be better in those wall coverages, the three guys picking him up when he's coming kind of from the top of the key, or they'll use different people to actually try to do that and force him to either get rid of the ball in those instances or force him to have to drive into two guys and not have the space to actually get to the rim. But Carlisle said it best, like that. What that leads to is open shots for others, which he called collateral problems. I thought that was a good way of putting it. And Carlisle's last thing wasn't a specific point to Giannis, although it did feel that way at times. He said they got to cut down on fouls in the next game. The Pacers had 22, and this one Bucks had 20. It was a whistly game. But like Giannis shooting 15 free throws, in some ways, I think that's just a consequence of playing him, right? In fact, I think you got to foul him hard, not like injure him hard. I'm not advocating for anything like that. What I mean is, you can't let him make the layup or make the shot if you're going to foul him. You have to foul him hard enough that he's taking 2 free throws, and he'll make more than 8 of 15 going forward most of the time. But that is one imperfection in his game, is the free throw line. He made a bunch when the Bucks beat the Pacers back in December, right? But you gotta be physical with him on those. But cutting those fouls down is, one, more possible if you keep him away from the rim, but 2, it's the other guys, right? That's where I think the focus would be there. 8 free throws for Kevin Porter Jr., 3 for Brook Lopez. That's 11 right there. 15 for Giannis. They'll try to cut that down. That's going to be tough. Pascal Siakam, the first thing he said is make it look crowded. That was a Giannis-related thing. And then he mentioned getting out to shooters. And I think that the Pacers did pretty well with this for the first half of the game. In the second half, especially in the fourth quarter, as A.J. Green really got going, they had a couple moments, quite a few in that fourth quarter, where I was like, oh, man, they did not remember where A.J. Green was in that specific play. And, of course, he's the guy who got going. He is the only guy it felt like they lost. Like, they never were truly freaking out about a Gary Trent shot that they forgot about him for. Taurean Prince only shot once. Like, they did a good job figuring out where he was. Maybe they were willing to live with Portis a little bit, but he was a little open at times. Siakam was somebody better there, which was hilarious in my head at first, because he said, yeah, we got to show Giannis more crowds to be better there. We got to get out to shooters. Like, those are, in some ways, competing goals, right? You're sending multiple guys to Giannis. You have to leave the shooters to do that, especially in that group the Bucks had late that was playing so well, and the Pacers were dodging some bullets against that group when they missed some threes late. Regardless, I think they can do better for a 48-minute game of getting out to shooters. Their fourth quarter defense in that way was imperfect. And Siakam just generally thought there were some possessions that the Pacers didn't do what they were supposed to, right? Just basic execution stuff. Many guys throughout the post-game experience mentioned the word settle, right? And I think that was also part of their second half, was when they were playing with the lead, they got a little too jumper happy. Not any number specific that I could throw at you. You could look at the shot charts and kind of see it for yourself. 17 threes attempted in the first half for the Pacers in this game, 17 attempted in the second half, right? It didn't look like it from the stat sheet, but if you watch the game, it felt like their paint pressure wasn't quite as much there. Their movement, their flow, right? Ben Mathurin had all these awesome cuts. Lots of guys were playing better in the first half, getting to the basket in a way that the Bucks adjusted. Part of that's on Milwaukee's defensive improvements, but some of that's on the Pacers to keep executing well into the second half. Thomas Bryant, same thing with Giannis. He said the Pacers have to mix it up, right? Keep his mind moving, keep him guessing. I mentioned that earlier, but making it harder on him. Brian had that assignment a few times. I don't know if the Pacers want to do that, but the last thing Thomas Bryant said was the one that made me go, oh, that's interesting. And no one else said this, and it made me dig into some numbers. He said the Pacers want to play faster going forward. Wow. You very rarely hear the Pacers after a big win say, yeah, we were too slow in this game. They did have some long possessions, 81 shot attempts for the Pacers in this game. And they took 26 free throws, right? It's not like it was a super low possession game, but you don't think of a game after the Pacers take 81 shots that it was like rapid or anything, even with 26 free throws. And it was a long game. Giannis took a lot of free throws, and they take a long time, and there were lots of foul calls in general, and it's on ESPN, and it's the playoffs. Like, everything's longer, but it was slower paced. 81 shots for the Pacers is pretty low. That would have been tied for their fourth fewest in a game this season. If you just want to go raw total possessions, right? Don't worry about shot attempts. That can get caught up with free throws. That's fine. I'll let you do that, and I'll do it for you. They had 96 possessions in this game. Only 12 games had fewer than that in the regular season for the Pacers. So bottom 16-ish% possession total game for the Pacers. Now, look, possessions in a total game is not just how fast you play. It also matters how fast your opponent plays. And if your opponent plays slow, you're going to get less chances too. It's going to add up over time. If it's 3 seconds per one possession, 8 possessions go by, that's an extra trip of a shot clock in total, right? It does work in connection with how fast the Bucks play. There's only so much the Pacers can do, but I think they'd like to be faster than 96 possessions. And they had some trips, especially against the zone, where it took them a long time to get to the shot they wanted. The dagger 3 for Myles Turner was a shot clock buzzer beater. Ben Mathurin had a shot clock buzzer beater waved off. Aaron Nesmith had a shot clock buzzer beater that didn't count right. They had a lot of shots just off the top of my head I can remember that were late in the clock, right? And that doesn't even account for ones I can't remember or ones that I could have just looked up and didn't. Like, they had some long possessions, and they did. I thought they played with pace in general, right? Especially early, they were getting into the paint, but the Bucks pressured, right? Ryan Rollins was pressing like fourth possession of the game. When the Bucks score, they get back into zone sometimes, and it does make it hard for the Pacers to play the way they want faster. So in terms of what the players said, the adjustments to keep an eye on for would be more 3-man defense on Giannis. That would be my interpretation of putting everything together. Everybody said against him. They want to be crisp on their rotations out to shooters, which I thought they did pretty well at that in general. And I think they forced Bucks misses, but the Bucks also missed a lot of threes. And then speeding things up, getting into their sets faster, trying to get across the timeline faster, just flow like the Pacers want to flow. And if they get a turnover, they were great at pushing. And if the ball goes flying out of bounds, they're great at trying to get going. But they get up to 100, 102 possessions, I think they'll feel better about their pace and their general style of play. That's what the players said. What do I think? Now, some of you might say, who cares? You're not on the team. Fair point. Well, I have notes. I watched the game. Let me tell you what I think I'm looking out for when it comes to potential changes for the Pacers in Game 2. Before we talk about that, let's talk about DoorDash. NBA fans, you know what time it is. It's the playoff season, which means big performances and even bigger awards. DoorDash is bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for DashPass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs. It's called They Swoosh You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, DashPass members score a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more. Use the code Wingstop50 at checkout. Boom, the combo's yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon to midnight the day after a game. Terms apply. Who's it going to be? Who's going to be the 50-point scorer? Who knows? But imagine being rewarded with free food just because somebody went off and you have that DashPass membership. So here's the play. Sign up for DashPass to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. When any player scores 50 plus in a playoff game, DashPass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tenders combo from Wingstop the next day with a $20+ order and code Wingstop50. That's DashPass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Terms apply. We're back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Your second listen has to be Locked On Bucks. It has to be this entire series. Hear what Camille and Justin have to say about Game 1. I predict a lot of talk, and by I predict, I mean I've listened, about bad shooting from the Bucks and other many things they can do better, including, hey, Kyle Kuzma was not very good in this game. Let me talk about some stuff that I noticed that I wrote down. I'm going to keep all these notes through Game 2 as we talk to Derek Kramer about this on tomorrow's episode. He's going to join us to look ahead at Game 2, adjustments, changes, all the sorts of flow from the series. The first couple things to talk about. The game opens. Pascal Siakam's on Giannis. Tyrese Haliburton's on Taurean Prince. Andrew Nembhard's on Ryan Rollins. I was wondering, how's that going to look? How am I going to feel about that when the game ends? I felt pretty good, actually, about the Pacers' defensive assignments by the end of the game, mostly because Brook Lopez had less of an impact than I thought, right? 3 for 6. He only took 2 threes, over half his shots inside the arc. That's something I talked about before the series. He's kind of transformed to be more inward. Andrew Nembhard went right at him on the other end, right? That worked for Turner. He could switch on to Giannis when Lopez would set screens. I think it has to be Siakam on Giannis and Turner on Lopez. I think if Taurean Prince is only taking one shot, Tyrese Haliburton's got to be on him. Doc Rivers says after the game they didn't get Kuzma more involved. You need a bigger defender on him in that case. Great. That's Aaron Nesmith's job. And then you put Nembhard on the best guard. If Dame returns, I think they would stick with those. And so some of it's results-based. The starters did not play well for the Bucks, certainly. But I was curious and that moment, is this how the Pacers are going to want to line up when game 2 starts? Are they going to want to move Haliburton to Rollins? Are they going to need to move Nesmith? Whatever. What are they going to need to do? Nothing. I actually think that was something I wouldn't change, but something that I thought matchups. We're going to be talking about this all series after game 1. Again, I'll reserve the right to change this if Lillard comes back and things change, but I think the Pacers got the starters right. Okay, this is something to keep an eye on. And this is something that bogged down the Pacers' pace in game 1. When it was small versus small. Portis at the 5 for Milwaukee and Toppin Siakam or Toppin Walker or Siakam Walker or all three, whatever you want to say. No center for the Pacers. No Thomas Bryant or Myles Turner. And they played Thomas Bryant. They weren't that small a lot, but usually the teams have been willing to go zone against the Bucks bench. I understand that. I've seen that all season. But in small versus small with no center, that's harder, right? When Siakam and Toppin are out there, or all three of those bigs, that's enough shooting and speed to scare teams out of zone sometimes. Not the Bucks. The Bucks went zone in those moments. I'll be very curious if they're willing to do it again, because that is the time I thought the Pacers did the best against zone, is when they were flowing quickly with their motion stuff. TJ McConnell was wheeling right into his spots in the middle of the paint against those groups. When the center's out there, it's different. When the starters are out there, the Bucks are one of the only teams that was willing to go zone against the Pacers. But that's something I'm keeping an eye on for the Pacers in game 2 is, can those small groups thrive against those zones? Or are they going to need to tweak things up there, get more shooting on the floor with those groups? I think it's going to be important that if McConnell's out there with those smaller front court groups, that the 2-3, Nesmith has to be one of them. Like, they need the shooting he provides. And Mathurin took a bunch of threes. I thought they were in rhythm. They need him to make those, right, to keep punishing against those zones. I don't think Mathurin took a three that I thought, that was a terrible shot. Ben Mathurin, what are you doing? In fact, I think when he takes in rhythm threes, the Pacers are thrilled, even if he doesn't make them. But those zone moments, small smalls, keep an eye on the Pacers adjusting to play a little different in those moments. The bench lineup matchups, I'll be very curious if they stick with what they did last game. I think they should. I mentioned this after game 1, but they made an adjustment mid-game. Took TJ McConnell off of Kevin Porter Jr., put Ben Mathurin on there, put McConnell on AJ Green. Instead, if the Bucks change up their lineup and AJ Green is starting or Gary Trent is starting, where do they put McConnell, right? I think they need to keep Mathurin on Porter Jr., right? KPJ can get going. He did not in game 1. He had 12 points on 7 shots. It's pretty good. He did draw a lot of fouls. I mentioned that already, but he wasn't making shots from the field specifically. He was early against McConnell. I don't think the Pacers can go back to that. So what do they do if it's something different, right? If AJ Green starts and Kuzma's with the bench, for example, and the bench gets a little bigger, not a lot bigger, but a little bigger for Milwaukee, where do they put McConnell? Is it on Gary Trent? Are they going to be okay with that? They can't put him on Kuzma. That's too much size to give up. That is something I'll be fascinated by in game 2, is where is TJ McConnell on defense? And if Gary Trent ends up starting instead, which maybe is possible, I thought Gary Trent was quite good inside the arc in this game. Well, then you keep McConnell on Green because he doesn't have as much rim pressure ability, but that's still scary. You need him to be on his A game defensively. Keep an eye on that. That Bucks adjustment will lead to the Pacers adjustment. I had 2 consecutive notes on Thomas Bryant. First, he came in for the first time, late first quarter, early second. And at first I thought, oh, this is going kind of okay. This isn't terrible. I think he came in with 1:38 to go. Pacers immediately got a 3 out of Jarris, and then they were up 8 or 9 at the end of the first quarter. Then early in the second quarter, this is going fine. Thomas Bryant drew a foul as the Pacers' first free throw. I was like, I didn't think he was terrible, but he missed a 3 and then had some defensive moments with like Portis scoring easily and the Bucks getting some good shots. And he came out with 8:38 to go, and they were only up 7, and they lost the non-Giannis minutes. Look, I get that they want a lot of their biggest players and best defenders out there when Giannis is out there, and that's going to be Turner, and that's going to be Siakam, and that's going to be Walker, and that's going to be Nesmith. I think Bryant's minutes went more appropriately than I thought. And one of my big questions about game 1 was, if you can play 10 and win, should you just do it, right? This has been one of the most under-discussed things from game 1 to me. And I have to give myself blame for not doing this. The Pacers won game 1, and they didn't have a single, Haliburton played 34 minutes and 20 seconds. Siakam didn't touch 33. 2 starters under 30 minutes. Only 1 bench player hit 20 in Ben Mathurin, right? They kept minutes down pretty well, and it helped that it was a blowout, but they even had rotation guys in pretty late in the game. I bring this up to say, if you can go 10 deep and get away with it, that's good, right? I don't think they should play Thomas Bryant as many minutes if they're set on playing him for whatever reason, keeping Turner's minutes down, keeping their front court in check, because it takes a village of effort and a ton of fouls to defend Giannis. I like the way that Tom Lewis put it in his Indy Cornrows story, that's 30. You have 36 fouls, right, across the 6 players that they had the front court between Nesmith, Siakam, Turner, Toppin, Walker, and Bryant. You have 36 fouls. So you're going to be cycling through those guys. I was wrong about how much Jarris would play in this series, but I think they might reduce Thomas Bryant's minutes. And if they're going to play him, which is fine enough, if he doesn't stink, he did not stink in game 1. He wasn't great. They have to not play him with McConnell. They just could not get enough juice out of those units on both ends of the floor. And again, it was fine. But my first note on Thomas Bryant was, I like these minutes more than I expected. My next one was, never mind on that. So we'll see what they go to there. But I did not think he was bad. I'm being a little harsh on his minutes. His defense was not particularly good, but he was fine in this one. The group that killed the Pacers, the Giannis plus the bench groups. The key thing for the Pacers to potentially respond well to that group, go at AJ Green. And that's so obvious to say, like the Bucks aren't going to be like, oh crap, we didn't expect them to target AJ Green every possession. Like, that's what teams do against the Milwaukee Bucks. But like, it happened in the game. Tyrese Haliburton's best stretch of actual scoring, that third quarter stretch, came when he went at AJ Green, right? For a couple minutes of time. Tyrese Haliburton goes 2 for 2, guarded by AJ Green. In fact, Siakam goes 3 for 5, Haliburton 2 for 2, Toppin 1 for 1, and then Mathurin and Walker go 0 for 1. I can't do math very quickly, but I believe that's 6 for 10 on all shots defended with AJ Green as the closest defender. The Bucks are going to try to not have AJ Green be the closest defender whenever they can. But like, that is something the Pacers should obviously try to attack. You don't want to get too mismatch hunty, but the Pacers did a good job of, like, when Siakam had a small on him, they got him the ball and then played out from there. Like, they did a good job identifying matchups, but still playing their game through those, if that makes sense. Whoever AJ Green is on, that is where the Pacers need to try to find an advantage and keep up or get ahead in those minutes when it's Giannis plus the shooters or Giannis Dame shooters, whatever the new lineup is going to be. And that involves, I think, a lot of targeting of AJ Green, whether that guy's setting screens, whether that guy's getting the ball in certain spots. That's important. There's a lot more to discuss. Sub patterns. Is Dame going to return? Where else can the Pacers be better in game 2 coming to close out today's Locked On Pacers? Before we get to any of that, let's talk about FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here. They're rolling. What a fun first weekend. FanDuel has given new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you will get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Many love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking their favorite team or diving into player props, putting them all together. It's a blast for many. And from 3-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. I just finished Rockets Warriors right before recording this, so those could be your second listen. That was a great game. Locked On Wolves could be your second listen. I think that was the road team that the fewest predicted would win the series. That won game 1. A lot of chalk, but not all chalk. Road winners in LA, road winners in Houston to open up the playoffs. And holy cow, did the Thunder look good. Locked On Thunder. We'll have more on that. They were up 51 at many points in the game. The Celtics were winning by a point a minute for a while, and then the Magic roared back and made that a little more interesting for a while. Lots of great games. I love the playoffs so much. Okay, couple more things to talk about. I'm really intrigued by what the Pacers are doing with this front court sub pattern. The reason for it is very obvious. Siakam is playing de facto backup 5, kind of, or it's him and Toppin, whatever. They need to get to that earlier. So Toppin's coming in really early in this one. And then Siakam comes in with the second group of subs, both halves. It was Toppin in for Siakam, and then Ben Mathurin and TJ McConnell came in, and Siakam came in for Turner with those guys, right? And then eventually Jarris Walker would come in for Toppin. Like, if that's how they're going to handle that, and then Toppin came right back in for Tyrese Haliburton, right? If that's how they're going to do that, that's fine. But that, I think, is kind of why they had to play Thomas Bryant, because they took Turner out with that first subgroup to get Siakam back in, because they're getting, the big burn for both of their front court guys by doing that. Maybe they wait till the third sub, bring in Walker and Siakam at the same time for Toppin Turner, just completely flip up the front court until Toppin has to come back in? I don't know. I'm probably overthinking the rotational stuff. They played 9 guys against New York last year, but they played 8 against Milwaukee. Maybe they'll just play 10 until they can't, right? Again, like I mentioned, I don't want to be results based on just the fact that they won and it looked good. But like, if you can play 10 and win, you should. It helps to keep your minutes in check. And I asked Thomas Bryant about the bench. Like, the bench played well together in this game, better than I think many expected. But the front court rotation part of it specifically was interesting to me. And Thomas Bryant routinely was playing without Giannis on the floor, which is also interesting because, like, that's a philosophy thing. How do you want to do this as the Pacers? Do you want to try to just completely dominate the Giannis is out minutes and then try to keep up the rest? Or do you want to try to maximize your chances of winning with Giannis on the floor and then use the rest of those minutes as rest moments? And in game 1, the latter was what happened, right? They dominated the Giannis minutes. Minus 18, the Bucks were with Giannis on the floor. And it's not because of him, but that's what happened. And they won the game by 19, which means in the 10 minutes he sat, they won by only 1 point, right? And that's fine. It worked. Again, I'm not criticizing their choices, but I'm saying that's something to watch as a tweak, right? To see how the Pacers try to manage or handle that. If they want to try to maybe swing that pendulum a little bit more towards the, okay, Giannis is out, let's go, let's surge, let's hit hard right now minutes, which is so much easier said than done. Because you could if you try to do that and you screw up, you don't gain any edge. Oof. I mean, that hurts so bad. But you could tell at times when the Greek Freak came in or out, how the Pacers were looking towards the bench and trying to figure out who they wanted in there or not. So in some ways, their rotation was based on their own front court tweaks and desires. In some ways, I think it was reactive to the 2-time MVP. And in some ways, it worked. And so who cares what I think? And I was wrong. I thought they were only going to play 8 guys in this series. And I wondered who the 8th guy would even be. And then they played 10. I mean, if it works, it works. Okay, last thing I want to touch on here. Look, I don't know if Dame's going to play. I'm not going to guess. I'm not going to tell you about anything that I don't know. I don't know if Dame's going to play. There was like a camera angle that made it look like when he was talking to Tyrese and Pascal during the game, that he said, I'll see you on Tuesday. But then they got the league pass feed with the guy who does the audio dubs really well, and it does not look like that's what he said. I'm not guessing. He'll play at some point in the series. That's what the reporting is and says. When he does, how is that going to change what the Bucks do? And how will the Pacers react to those things? Will Ryan Rollins just not play at all? Is that the easy solution? Kevin Porter Jr. is just your backup guard. Dame starts with the same starting group. Maybe they move a starter in for Kuzma. Bada bing, bada boom. Maybe, right? And then Nembhard would just guard him, and that's not that much change, right? The Pacers would have the same matchups against that group. I kind of mentioned that earlier when I talked about their matchups off the cut. I meant to save that for this part, but that's okay. I think that would be fine. But if they change up 2 things and they bring in a shooter, does that stress out Haliburton enough on defense that you're losing him on offense? And if so, how do you react to that as the Pacers? If they don't change their starting lineup at all, how good is their bench going to be? If it's Dame, Giannis in those shooters, like, are the Pacers going to have to change their reserve rotation to keep up with that group? For now, I think because of the way they aligned to start game 1 defensively, they don't really need to tweak anything, even if Lillard plays game 2, right? The matchups, they'll be comfortable with how the bench played and what worked and what didn't, and who was guarding who. But like, they already had to tweak who's guarding KPJ. Like, one player playing well or one matchup not going the way you expect flips everything, flips all these focuses that you have. And Damian Lillard's really good. He scored 35 points in the first half of the series last year, for Pete's sake. Like, I think people forgot about that. So I'll be very curious how his return impacts everything I've talked about today, if it's even in game 2 that he comes back, because I think it could force the Pacers to reconfigure all of these kind of defensive matchups and make slight rotational tweaks. Like, if they're going to make almost all of their first 3 subs front court based, like, do they need to bring in Jarris earlier to try to, get someone out and then back in like Nesmith, who can guard Dame if he's in for longer, if he comes in with those second units, right? I think that's all stuff to consider, as how the Pacers react to his return, how it changes their rotation, what changes are made from these sub patterns from game 1 to 2. I'd be guessing a little bit on what they might tweak there, the Bucks specifically, because they might change their starting lineup anyway. It was not very good in game 1, but that is where I think you should keep an eye on the Pacers changing the way they play from game 1 to 2. A lot of Giannis, some pace, some small tweaks here and there against certain units that play different defensive coverages. But in general, the Pacers got a 3 for 13 game from their All-NBA player from last year. They shot pretty good, but not exceptional from 3, and they ran the Bucks out of the building. They got to feel good, but they got to do it again for everyone else to feel great about where they're heading in the series. They did not hold a 2-game edge. Actually, they did. They were up 3-1 against the Bucks last year. They did not hold a 2-game edge this early in a series last year. We could learn a lot about this team pending the results of this game Tuesday. Tomorrow, Derek Kramer will join us to talk more about Game 2. What could you see the Pacers do adjustment-wise that I didn't talk about today? What mentality shift is different when you're playing up and at home? What else did I miss that's going to matter? He wrote a great story about Andrew Nembhard today, so look forward to that. And then, of course, Tuesday night, Game 2 from the Arena podcast. Hopefully, again, we'll see how the timing works out. Thank you guys so much for listening today. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Tony R. East. I have a story in Forbes. You can read about the Pacers' mentality shift that was very obvious to me from last year to this year in terms of how they grew up in their preparation for the playoffs. And this podcast has a Twitter account. It's at Locked On Pacers. And on Instagram, same handle, Locked On Pacers. We will see you guys tomorrow talking more Pacers Bucks with Derek Kramer. Till then, everybody have a wonderful day.